Hi, everybody. Welcome back to another edition of Beyond the Cage, streaming live here on MMA World and the MMA UK Facebook pages, and of course the Beyond the Cage Facebook page. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in live or watching after the fact, either on Facebook or my YouTube channel, youtube.com/Beyond the Cage podcast. Myself, Jim Graham, along with my co-host Kayla Beatty, will be joining me shortly to talk about UFC 219, as well as give our picks for the 2017 Best in Mixed Martial Arts Awards. We have 8 categories, and we're going to go over that here in a minute as I bring in Kayla on the broadcast this evening. Once again, I'm your host, Jim Graham. You can follow me on Twitter at Jim Graham. You can like MMA World and MMA UK on Facebook. And how's it going today, Kayla?
Hey, Jim. Good. How are you?
I am doing good. It's actually, well, not that warm here, but it's somewhat sunny, so that's something going on here in Michigan. So how are you doing this morning?
I'm good. I'm okay. My friends and I keep passing around this cold. It's funny. It's sunny out here, but everyone's sick. So I'm hoping I can get through, our whole thing here without too many coughs. And sorry if I'm a little nasally.
Yeah, at least you sound all right now, so
Okay.
that's good. I got it real quickly. I saw this bizarre story talking about people that look alike. A man was jailed. I know this is not MMA related, but I want to mention it because it just blew my mind. I'm just kind of doing some research. I saw something, and it said this man was jailed for a robbery he committed in Kansas, but he looked so much like the guy that actually did it. They ended up being in the same prison, and he found out about it, told the Innocence Project and stuff. They passed along both photos of both men to the eyewitnesses that put him away because there was no DNA or anything else tying him to the crime other than eyewitness testimony. And all the eyewitnesses that said they could not tell a difference between these two men. And so the guy ended up getting freed after spending 17 years in prison for a crime he didn't commit.
Wow. Can you imagine?
This is
That's so crazy.
Yeah. Even the county prosecutor, who's been doing this for 27 years in Missouri, said he's never seen a case like this. This is the most bizarre case he's ever witnessed. And yeah, this is pretty crazy. And not only that, they shared the same first name. Not only do they look like, they're both named Richard.
What bad luck does that guy have? That sucks.
Yeah. So obviously, if you're wrongly accused and get in jail, that guy's going to get some money. So I hate to say his life's fixed or anything, but I guess at least eventually they got the right guy.
Man, yeah, what bad luck, but 17 years later, that's a bummer.
Yeah. So anyways, I just it kind of came up and about that. So all right, let's get to the task at hand. We got a lot to cover. I was telling everybody when I opened, we have our Mixed Martial Arts Awards coming up today, as you and I will go through 8 different categories. I'm super excited for this. It's my favorite time of year. We have a lot of great categories that have refined over the years, and these are the ones I feel that work best. So we have Rising Star, Female Fighter of the Year, Most Improved Fighter, Event of the Year, Submission, Knockout Fight, and of course, Fighter of the Year. Those are the 8 categories we have, and I'll kind of go over the criteria that we were kind of looking at for each category as well. But before we get to that, of course, we got to talk about UFC 219, which was this past weekend over in Las Vegas. Now, you and I, when we were breaking down this card, we were like, this is not a typical New Year's card. This is a little, not as big star power. And maybe that showed a little bit because out of the 10 fights, only 2 finishes.
Yeah.
Even for UFC standards, that's very rare. The main card was, even though we saw a finish on the main card, it was still relatively kind of and even the finish that happened wasn't like, wow, that was a finish. It was kind of like, did that guy just get finished? It wasn't the typical way you kind of see cards go. And this happens sometimes, though. I don't think it's just because it wasn't as big as usual that's why this card was kind of ho-hum. It's just it ended up kind of not delivering the way that MMA cards can.
Yeah, I think that, whether it was just the way that the athletes were matched, maybe they were almost a little too similar, or I think there was a few fighters there that kind of hesitated a little bit. There's a little bit of hesitation. I think also too, it kind of goes with the momentum of the night. I don't know how much truth there is to this, but it does seem like when those prelims start with a real nasty finish or nasty knockout, I don't know if anyone's watching while they're waiting to go out next, but it does seem like that kind of brings some momentum. So I don't want to blame like Tim Elliott or any of the guys in the prelims, but maybe because there's a lot of UDs starting, it kind of just kept with that momentum, I
Possibly.
guess.
We had a comment from Robert on our doppelganger thing, talking about like Kansas City and stuff. So what were they on a donut? I mean, if you go to the article, it's on the front page of Reddit right now. They'll give you the link to the
Mm.
article, and you look at the picture. They have a side by side. It's pretty hard to tell who it was. I'm not excusing the police officers or even the eyewitnesses because obviously they admitted after the fact that they couldn't tell. But it's one of those. It's just a bizarre case. I'm not trying to say the man shouldn't have spent 17 years in jail. Obviously, he shouldn't have. But it's just stuff happens sometimes, man. I don't know if it's anyone's real fault to blame. I mean, I didn't know how the trial went, but that come ultimately down to the jury and the case presented and lawyers and stuff. So there's a lot of different factors going in. It's just unfortunate. It shouldn't happen, but it did.
I thought the reason why you were going to bring this up is I had seen something online where it was talking about how John Jones spent his Christmas Eve or his holiday, and I don't think that it was him, but it looked like someone that was similar to him, and he was like in his underwear and outside of the 7-Eleven. So I thought you were going to say that maybe that guy just looked like John Jones.
Well, and then of course there's the Twitter identity where people think it's at John Jones, but actually at John.
Oh my God, that poor
Jones,
guy.
Artist guy. His actual Twitter's at Johnny Bones. So this dude gets tons of hate like constantly. About the actual
the
John.
little video that he put together.
So John Jones kind of has a Twitter doppelganger. But yeah, so though that one you just gotta, that one's more easier to double check, but all right, so 219, as you said, did start off with the nice finish by Tim Elliott with the Anaconda choke. Ended up netting him a performance of the night bonus. No surprise, won only 2 finishes. You're almost kind of guaranteed an extra $50,000. And for Tim Elliott, kind of helps out because his opponent missed weight his last fight. He was trying to get the show money and stuff, so I guess getting him a little extra money, not a bad thing there. Then our good friend Louis Smolka ended up losing. I saw this tweet by Mike Bond from MMA Junkie. He becomes the first fighter in UFC flyweight history to lose 4 consecutive fights.
Oh, no.
That's an unfortunate statistic and honor to have. So unfortunately for Louis, probably will end up getting released after having that honor. That's not an honor you want.
Right. Do you really think they're going to let him go?
I mean, it's hard to keep someone around with 4 straight losses.
Yeah.
I mean, as much as I like him. And that's not to say he can't bounce back.
Right.
So, then there was a draw by Omari Akhmedov and Marin Vettori. So that always adds to the, greatness of a card. Then we were talking about this matchup on the undercard. Miles Jury and Rick Glenn kind of said, Miles Jury's been off for a while. How will he look? We know Rick Glenn is a gamer. He loves upsetting people. But Miles was able to go in there and get the job done, the unanimous decision victory. So congrats to Miles on the victory. Trains over here at, I think it's his gym, or he at least is co-owning it, Fuse MMA over in Clinton Township, Michigan.
Nice.
So I know he's done a lot of training in San Diego previously at Alliance, but I think he does a lot of training at home now. So congrats to Miles on another victory, beating a solid opponent in Rick Glenn. And then we talked about Khalil Roundtree, kind of like, this guy's a dangerous striker, but still needs to work on his grappling game. And the newcomer, Olinchuk, or how you pronounce his name, took it to the ground, was able to beat Roundtree. You kind of heard in the broadcast with Dominic Cruz and Joe Rogan them saying that while, yes, he's a very strong light heavyweight, maybe all that muscle kind of deters him from being, really conditioned at 205, and they kind of were almost hinting that maybe Khalil should just be a little smaller heavyweight as opposed to making that cut down to 205. I think that's something that he maybe should consider, at least test out, because this is a fight, not to take anything away from his opponent, but that was a guy he probably should have beat.
Yeah.
It was tailor-made for him to win, and he kind of got smoked, to be honest. Like, he got kind of wiped out in that fight.
Yeah, you definitely saw his conditioning, take a downfall in the last couple rounds. And the whole time when I was watching it, I was thinking that, is this his original weight class? Because I don't remember him looking that jacked. and I just didn't remember him at that weight division. So I think, it was something that was obvious to all of us that maybe he should consider being one of the bigger guys in a lower weight class.
Yeah, I think it's something that he's going to have to consider. He's going to have to look at. But we'll see what he decides, because maybe it's just a simply thing of changing his diet to be more in shape for 205. It's, but obviously not cutting weight is always a good thing too. We've seen quite a few people have success in the recent years, more so than in years past, moving up the weight class. And the good thing for Khalil is neither division is that deep right now.
Yeah.
Heavyweight or light heavyweight is a very deep division. So I think moving up is not necessarily a bad thing. I think gone are the days of the really super big dominant wrestlers like Brock Lesnar and Shane Carwin, and we're getting more guys that are around that 240, kind of 250 range. Francis Ngannou obviously is maybe the exception to the mold. That dude's just an absolute monster. But other than that, we kind of see more of the traditional heavyweight, kind of between 235 and 245. And so even at like 230 pounds, I'm not sure how much he weighs not cutting weight, he wouldn't seem that outmatched, I think, against some of these guys.
Yeah.
Obviously, he's still going to have to develop his grappling skills, but his conditioning shouldn't be the sole reason why he loses the grappling exchanges. It'll just be simply he's not skilled enough, which is easier to fix, I feel like.
Yeah, no, I agree.
Your body can only go it can only go so much, but I think that would be worthwhile for him to look at. He's obviously a new year, maybe a new weight class for him. All right, we got a couple of comments to get to. We had Ray saying, hello, Happy New Year. Happy New Year, Ray. Thanks for tuning back in.
New Year.
We had David Templar thinks the UFC should get Paul Daly versus Nick Diaz 2. I don't think that's going to happen. Paul Daly's never going to come back in the UFC after the Josh Koscheck thing. And second of all, he signed with Bellator. If anybody has the chance to sign this happening, it's Bellator, because Nick Diaz might be able to ask for his release after like refusing fights or being at. If anybody pulls that off, I think Bellator would have a better chance of pulling it off than the UFC. I just think the UFC is never letting Paul Daly back into their organization.
Yeah, I don't see them letting him go back, and I don't even think he wants to go back. I think he's pretty happy with, how he's treated over at Bellator, and I think that he has fights there that he still wants to go after. And I think, like you said, I could see Nick Diaz going over to Bellator and being happier there too, just because it seems like have a little more.
I think it's more likely because he's familiar with Scott Coker after all the years. I think that's more likely to happen. Though realistically, I think he's pretty happy just doing what he's doing, just chilling, doing seminars, hanging out, training, doing triathlons or whatever. I think he's perfectly content doing that. So otherwise he would have fought right after his suspension was lifted, right? I mean,
yeah, that's how I feel. It's like the Diaz brothers really don't want to come back. I think if Nate comes back, it's for a money fight and for that third Connor.
Well, yeah, both of them. And we had our friend Carrie from In the Girls Corner saying, you loved it. I loved it too. Just it wasn't as exciting as it could be. That's all I said. All right, so getting to the main card here, we kicked off at Neil Magny, Carlos Condit. Both you and I picked Carlos in this fight. It did not go that way. Neil Magny won the fight. I will admit that, but this was a good win for Neil, but it wasn't like he did something fantastic in this fight. I think this was more Carlos kind of getting off that rust and kind of going back in, more so than Neil Magny doing something that beat Carlos Condit. He did a strategy that won, but I don't think that was the same Carlos we remember from the Robbie Lawler, even the Robbie Lawler fight. I guess you could even say the Damian Maia fight. I think this was definitely a guy that, I hate to say gun shy, but I think was definitely taking it a lot easier and slower than we typically see Carlos Condit fight, because that strike count was, for him, pretty pathetic. And this is a guy that has thrown over 300 strikes in a match, and that was nowhere to be seen. And that was one of the big reasons he lost this fight. I don't know if it was just he didn't feel comfortable throwing that amount of strikes or he was that worried about the takedown. Regardless, it wasn't there on Saturday.
Yeah, it was interesting because I had heard that Carlos wanted to come back and fight because, he was kind of on the fence of whether or not he was going to continue. But he said he had some things that he was trying out in the gym, some new things that he wanted to test out in the octagon. And I think it just went, I don't know if maybe that was in his head and he was trying to find out, figure out a way to show off these new skills that he has. But Neil Magny did go in there with a good game plan of frustrating and putting on the pressure and just throwing so many different things at him, I think trying to keep Carlos guessing. So it was, kind of a game of chess, I guess, and Neil Magny just didn't really give Carlos that opportunity to, whether it be, like you said, showcase the old skills of Carlos Condit or these new skills that he had kind of hinted at. But yeah, it was a little frustrating because, like you said, this whole card. I don't want to say it was lackluster, but because it went to these unanimous decisions, I just feel like that was one of those ones that I was talking about where there was maybe some hesitation in the fight.
He did show some spinning attacks, which Carlos Condit typically hasn't shown in the past. So I think that may be one of the things he was working on, maybe having sort of dynamic strikes. But like I said, the output wasn't there. Like I said, this guy is known for putting up in even a 5-minute round 70, 80 strikes with punches and kicks. He was nowhere near that. And so to me, he was just off the pace he normally sets. And he was kind of trying to ease into it. And as we said with Neil Magny, Kayla, you have to get on him early. If you ease into a pace like this fight, that's how he likes to fight. And so right off the bat, he was already feeding in to Neil Magny's strategy. And so I think that's another reason why Magny was able to get off the win, because you got to come at him early. And so this was, as far as a stylistic matchup, bad for someone to ease their way into a fight, because that's how Neil Magny likes to fight. And unfortunately for Carlos Condit, kind of backfired on him a little bit, and he ended up getting a loss. All right, let's get to the next fight of the evening, Carla Esparza versus Cynthia Calvillo. A lot of people on Twitter saying it wasn't a robbery. I think it was to an extent. I had Cynthia winning this fight, though I thought Carla did show improved stand-up. You and I were kind of, I'll admit, I was probably more dismissive than you. I was pretty dismissive of Carla's stand-up. It was definitely improved. Is it great? No, but definitely better. Better than I thought it would hold up against Cynthia coming into this fight, where I thought she had a clear advantage. However, I thought Cynthia did a great, first of all, she shut Carla down, taking her down. Let's get that straight. I think she was credited with 2 takedown attempts, but it almost immediately popped back up. So to me, those don't even count. And we saw Cynthia go at Carla, get that takedown, and show very dominant top game. As we said, what does Carla do off her back? We're not sure. She hasn't been in that position. At least against Cynthia, didn't look that great. Landed a couple of cracking shots. And after the fight, I put this on Twitter as Carla looked kind of dejected. It did not look like a fighter that had won that fight. And someone tweeted at me oh, she typically doesn't show emotion. I'm like, there's a difference between showing emotion and having a stone face and looking like this. Her head was down. She was looking down the floor. This does not look like a woman that had just won a mixed martial arts fight. Agree or disagree, Kayla?
No, I agree, and I'm really glad that you brought that up too. I know that Las Vegas hasn't adopted the new rules, and I think I need to look this up, but I'm pretty sure the old rules, don't they give away more points for takedowns? But the reason why they want to change it is that you might get that takedown, but now they want to see you be more active when you get the takedown, actually do more damage. And I'm wondering if that kind of factored into the judging and the decision with this fight, because I definitely had the first round for Cynthia. The last 2 were a little bit closer, but I think, like you said, I feel like Cynthia did a slight more damage with strikes, and I think she had, I want to say in the second round, had a little more damage done on the ground when they were briefly there. But yeah, I don't know if I saw this going completely Carla's way.
Because Cynthia definitely had round 1. That's, to me, the most definitive round of this fight was Cynthia winning round 1. I don't think anyone can debate that. She clearly won that round. She got the takedown, outstruck Carla 28-16. Overall in the stats, Carla was only 2 for 9, like I said, but those 2 takedowns, she immediately popped up, and they were both in round number 2. No other round did she score a successful takedown. To me, takedown defense should count for something. Even popping back up. she negated that offense. Now, in the preceding 2 rounds, Carla did outstrike Cynthia 21-17 in round 2 and 25-12 in round 3. Now, you can make a case for Carla in round 3. She ended very well with that nice flurry. There was definitely damage from both ladies. I thought Cynthia, in my opinion, I would have gave her all 3 rounds. Now, I can make a case and say, all right, maybe you give Carla round 3. I thought she did enough to get the victory. I'm not saying – I do think it's a little bit of robbing. I'm going to be honest. I hate to, people out there saying it isn't. Maybe go back and watch it. Maybe that would change my opinion. But just the way she was controlling the pace, shutting her down, standing there, throwing bombs, returning, it just seemed like she was in complete control of that fight, and Carla was trying to play catch-up. That's how I felt this fight went. That's why it was hard for me to give Carla this victory, 29-28 or even 30-27. All judges did score 29-28, but I just didn't see her do enough to win 2 5-minute rounds.
Yeah, I think it really comes down to these new and old rules, and that's why I think that everyone should come to agreement of what they're scoring on.
We got a couple comments from Ray, and David Templar. David, we'll probably get to the Rory and Douglas Lima fight here. That comes to the 20th, so I would say probably in 2 weeks we'll probably get to that.
I'm trying to get credentials. It's here in LA, and I can get you guys full access.
Yeah, so we'll be doing that in 2 weeks, so don't worry. We'll hold it there. We got to tease it for future shows. It's just our first show of the year. So yeah, we'll be doing a full breakdown of the fight. Don't worry, David. We'll get to that. Again, thanks for and Ray going back and forth with them and stuff. But yeah, I hate when they kind of take. The thing is, it does count technically as a takedown, but if you pop right back up, the judges have to be smart enough to know that that takedown didn't do anything. So,
right.
All right, next fight, Dan Hooker against Mark Diakiese. As we were saying, this was the finish I was referring to earlier on in the program where it happened, but it was like, did that just happen? The first round, nothing really happened. I don't know who you want to give that first round to. I think you can make a case for either. I really wouldn't be mad because looking at the stats courtesy of Fight Metric, 14 combined strikes landed between the two guys. So to me, that's a 9-9 round. Realistically, I don't think you can really say someone won that round. I guess Dan Hooker did get a takedown, so I guess that maybe gives him the edge. But come on, that's pretty bad. And then Mark started to kind of put him on in round 2, outstruck him 26-11. I think I would have had it 1-1 at that. Round 3, Mark really starting to show off the striking, getting aggressive. And then I don't know what he was thinking. Shot a half-ass double leg and just whoop gets caught in a nice elbow up guillotine, and that was all she wrote. And the crowd just was stunned. They were all excited to cheer for a knockout. You could feel the crowd starting to come. And then that submission came, and everyone was just like, oh. It wasn't so much like there's anything wrong with Dan Hooker, but that's not how they wanted to see a finish. They were hoping some spinning back kick, tornado kick, spinning kick, or something was going to happen. And fortunately, Mark was his own worst enemy there and put himself in a very bad position that he shouldn't have been in, and he paid the price for it. He lost.
Yeah, I think this was, similar to Carlos and Neil. I think that Dan Hooker went in there with a game plan to kind of frustrate and not give Mark this opportunity to do the flashy stuff that we know he wanted to show. I myself, I got excited in the third round when, he kind of just went in there and wanted to go balls to the wall and look for some flashy striking and finish. But I think, like you said, he kind of almost got a little too eager and too sloppy, and Dan Hooker was just very present and able to catch that sloppy takedown attempt and sink in the submission. But at least we got a finish.
Yeah, we did get a finish, and it's one of those things where it's unfortunate it happened to fight. If it happens in training, you're kind of like, all right, I'm not going to do that again. But it just gets magnified when it's a fight. And I bet afterwards he felt horrible. Like, he probably was thinking, why did I just do that? Like, I had him. And it's just an awful feeling. It's one thing to lose, but to lose like that, very unfortunate for the Bone Crusher. He will be back, though. I think he's going to really learn from this mistake, or I hope so. He either learns from this mistake and becomes better, or he dwells on this too much and we see him kind of fade into oblivion. So I really think this is a big turning point for Mark. Now, not only getting finished in this fight, but his second loss in a row, his only 2 pro losses. So I think this is a big turning point for the man out of the UK. All right, let's get to co-main event of the evening, which was, Khabib versus Edson. I picked the upset in this one. Obviously, I look like a huge fool in this one. The only time I actually picked the underdog in a matchup, and I got absolutely hammered in this one. And I'll give it to Khabib. He showed up. He made weight. His conditioning looked good. His grappling looked good. It held out. He was able to take some very powerful strikes from one of the best strikers in the game, and make that dude look like garbage, which is amazing because nobody has done that to Edson Barboza in his whole career. And this is a pretty good career, a career where he's beaten some great fighters. And Khabib just walked him down, took him down, and just slapped him in the face for 15 minutes. And it deserves him a shot at Tony Ferguson or Conor McGregor, however that situation plays out. But it's time to him fight for some form of world championship. I think that much has been proven last Saturday.
Yeah, I think any of us, myself included, that were doubting Khabib after the last year and everything that went down, he was talking a lot of talk saying that he felt like he's ready for a title shot. Some of us didn't know if he deserved it anymore. I think that this performance, kind of shut us all up. He went in there and I love that he said, I'm going to show you that I'm diverse. I'm not going to just, take it to the ground and dominate where I naturally do. He went and stood against, like you said, one of the best strikers and just looked phenomenal. And then after the fight, had a really awesome post-fight conference. If any of you haven't seen it, definitely check it out. But he said he was ready to take on another fight too. He's throwing out ideas of having a 3-man tournament between him, Conor, and Tony. I just think that I really think that he is deserving of a title shot. I have an opinion of who I think it should be against, but I see him being champ soon, and I don't really know who in the division is going to be able to take him out. This was a test against one of the best strikers in the division, and he just completely dominated him. So it's going to be interesting to see what he does next. And he wants to be more active this year, which is really exciting.
Well, just on the basis of, we haven't got it so far yet this week. I'm still waiting for the question of when's Conor going to fight next. We've gotten one every week so far. We haven't got it there, so I'll just address this. He's not going to be fighting anytime soon. He's going to be spending his money. So just by the logic you and I have been presenting every week to every viewer that has wrote in about that, that makes it Tony versus Khabib as the next fight. And it will happen sometime here in 2018. I'm going to hold out that it happens in Tony's former home state in Michigan, and we have it here at Little Caesars Arena. I can hold out for that. Or, of course, with him training in Southern California, like where you're at, Kayla, that's probably very likely
one of us will get it
as well. So we can hold out for that to see that fight. But I think that's what's going to happen. And I'm super excited for it, and hopefully it happens because I think it's already been tried to be booked 3 separate occasions, Tony versus Khabib. So I hope, and twice has been because of Khabib, once has been because of Tony Ferguson. So hopefully that happens, and I think that's the fight to make, and I'm super excited for it because stylistically it makes sense. You have a guy that has a very good top game against the guy that has a very good game off his back. And so which one's going to win out? You also add in the supreme conditioning of Tony Ferguson. Obviously, I think this guy has some of the best, maybe the best conditioning in any division. And I say that just because of what he did to Rafael dos Anjos at 8,000 feet elevation in Mexico City. I don't know if you can do much better than that. And it's still like he could have went another 25 minutes. It's one, to me, the most fantastic performances inside the octagon. Because of that. So we know he can go forever, to quote Sandlot there. So very excited for that for that matchup coming up, wherever it may be, whether it's back at 8,000 feet elevation, whether it's in Los Angeles, whether it's here in Detroit, whether it's over in Russia. I don't know. Maybe that will get the first ever UFC fight in Russia. I'm not sure, but it's going to happen, and I think it's going to be a fantastic bout.
We have a comment from Brad. This guy has never lost a round in his career. He is a legit super phenom. Now this weight cutting is under control. We have a serious threat for lightweight and welterweight.
Well, I don't know if it's under control. It's one fight. Let's see if he can do it again. I mean, Cyborg made 139 once, right? That doesn't mean she could do it again. So let's. It seems he has it under control, and I will agree he hasn't lost a round. The guy's been super dominant. He's 25-0. I'm not taking that away from him, but let's see if he can do it again. Because as I just mentioned, he's been booked against Tony Ferg 3 times. He's been the reason twice why the fight hasn't happened. So history would dictate it might be him again. But we'll see. Maybe he can change history. Maybe he's changing history. And I hope so, because we need to see this fight. All right. Main event. We both picked Cyborg. We were both right. And the thing about this fight is she won not how we thought she would. We really thought Holly Holm would be the counter striker. We really thought Holly Holm would be the one moving in and out. But it really seemed like Holly Holm was the one that was really attacking Cyborg with attacks, and Cyborg was being the counter puncher, which Cyborg's typically in her career not been the counter puncher. She's been the one moving for attacking, either with really aggressive strikes or, kind of without, kind of like the Tanya Evinger, where she was kind of slowly picking apart, but she was still the one moving forward. In this one, Cyborg kind of let Holly come to her and was countering. I mean, proven by the striking statistics. Holly was only 48 of 232, and almost the same amount of strikes, 237 for Cyborg. Cyborg landed 131. So not only was Cyborg countering, she was landing way more effectively, which we wouldn't have probably thought coming into this bout, Kayla. We thought, Holly's going to, pitter-patter, hit her with these, maybe lower power shots, try to ignore her, get into a trap. And it just never seemed like that happened. Holly was trying to throw those shots, but Cyborg just saw them coming and was able to counter with heavier shots that definitely, I think, was wearing on Holly as those fights went off. She never got Cyborg to overcommit to anything. Yeah, she landed a few nice jabs. Yeah, she bloodied the nose a little bit. But at the end of the day, did nothing really to throw Cyborg off her game. And for a fighter who you and I both agreed was probably the best chance to beat Chris, it ended up being a complete wash. Though 2 judges somehow gave Holly 2 rounds. I don't know where those came from. I mean, just looking at the striking numbers, she got outstriked. This is from round 1 to 5. 20-5, 25-7, 23-6, 21-9, and then 42-21 in round 3. Tell me where 2 rounds are in there.
I'm telling you, those old rules.
Like,
I think the judges are very confused.
Like, I know you know these stats, Kayla, but come on.
Right. Yeah, and I think, I think we were talking about which lady had prepared for the other, whether it be that they had longer time to prepare or just better preparation. And I think Cyborg knew, had an idea of what Holly's game plan would be in. And I think that, like you had said last week, she's just evolved into such, into her prime. She's not that same old Cyborg that's going to put on that pressure and try to, rush for that finish and just pummel these women. She wanted to test herself too, and that's why later we'll discuss her a little bit, as we go into these awards and stuff. But I think that I really appreciate that she wanted to test herself, her conditioning, and not rush for a finish. And so I think that was really nice to see, like you said, her be the counter striker and see a different side of Cyborg. I think she just played the fight, better than Holly. And I think there was a little bit of hesitation with Holly Holm too.
Yeah, I think that those first couple hits in the first round definitely set the tone. I can guarantee she's never been hit that hard.
Yeah.
And so that maybe threw her off her game. Maybe not consciously, maybe subconsciously. It kind of threw her off a little bit. Gotta give her credit. She got a little wobbled, but never was fully looking like she was going to go out or going to get finished or anything like that. So I got her credit for that. But we talk about somebody making changes. We talked about Khalil Rountree earlier. She's going to really have to look at herself and look at her career. She's now in her late 30s. She's now 1-4 in her last 5 fights. She's already accomplished the goal of winning a UFC championship. And at the time, I guess you could still make a case it's the biggest upset of all time in UFC history. I think odds-wise it's technically Dillashaw over Barao, but I mean perception-wise, I think it's her against Ronda or still Matt Serra over GSP. But it's something she's going to have to look at. Obviously, she's a mother. She has a family. She has stuff going on. I don't know how well she's done financially. I don't know if that's a concern to her. I don't know that situation because sometimes fighters need the money, and that's why we see them hold on longer in their careers. So I think it's just something she's going to have to look at because obviously she's not at the same level she was. I think clearly she's lost a little bit of a step. And I'm not saying she's gotten hit in the head too many times, or she's not intelligent anymore, or she's like Mark Hunt saying he slurs his speech sometimes. Nothing like that. But it's just something she's going to have to consider because she has not looked good really in these last 5 fights. And really, Sands pulling that head kick out against Betchkea could very easily be 0-5 in her last 5 fights. And this is after winning the championship. So it's just something she, I think, seriously has to consider looking at.
No, I agree.
All right. It is time for the 2007 Beyond the Cage MMA Awards. If you miss seeing them or you want to see them written down, if you go to our Facebook page, Beyond the Cage, facebook.com/Beyond the Cage, we're Beyond the Cage podcast, I should say. We're going to have the complete listing printout, and then probably either you or I can write it up and do it on MMA UK and MMA Facebook and MMA World and all that too. But as far as if people want to see like a written sheet, if they want to go back and look at it and stuff, we'll have that available for everybody. So, all right. First award, again, the 8 awards will be Rising Star, Female Fight of the Year, Most Improved, Event of the Year, Submission, Knockout Fight, and Fighter of the Year. So we're going to start first with Rising Star. Now, Rising Star is an award given to, this can be male or female, given to a fighter that kind of just started their career and looks like they have championship potential. A fighter that not necessarily has come out of nowhere, but has really, a younger fighter, I should say, is really starting to show their worth and prove that they are an elite talent in the world of mixed martial arts. Now, I'm going to go first for this one. And I picked this one for 2 different reasons. One, not only is he now competing at an elite level, he is coming off an injury where some people thought, well, maybe not the end of him, but maybe he won't be able to get back to what he was before the injury. And also this year in mixed martial arts, he has been absolute fantastic. And he has continued to not only win, but submit his opponents too. And this is a guy who I think is on the cusp of a title shot in his division in the UFC. As I'm trying to pull up his stats here for everybody so I can even be more official. But he is undefeated so far in his career at 13-0. He most recently won in Fresno, California for the UFC. If I can't give you enough hints, I am referring to the man known as T-City, Brian Ortega, who since coming off of injury has won 2 straight fights, submitted both of his opponents, has a fight that I also considered for submission of the year. So that's in the mix too, not to give 2 things away, and has beaten the likes of Thiago Tavares, Diego Brandao, Clay Guida, and most recently Cub Swanson for a 13-0 record. And like I said, young guy, he's only 26 years old. He's now ranked 2 or 3 in the featherweight division, depending on where you go. So my pick for Rising Star is Mr. T-City, Brian Ortega.
Yeah, I think that's a great one for all of the reasons that you just said. And like you said, he's so close to being in that title shot talk, if he isn't already, especially after his dominating performance against Cub. I mean, Cub Swanson was right there in that title shot talk, and he completely shut him down. I'm picturing that look on Cub's face of just pure fear of being choked out, or like he said, he felt like he was going to die. Very, like you said, young guy. I think his mental game is right there. You could tell that he's manifesting that title shot, and I see him doing really well. So I think, like you said, he's definitely a rising star, and I'm so excited to see what he's going to be doing in 2018.
All right, your pick for Rising
My
Star.
Okay, so rising star. I don't have as many. Maybe you can pull up some of his statistics here, but looking at it, he is on a 3-fight win streak, almost 5-fight win streak, but there was one that was a draw. But that draw got fight of the night against Nicholas Dalby, and yeah, coming off of his last performance of taking out a guy who is a veteran of the sport. I don't want to say that he was the underdog because I know some people were already familiar with this guy's skills, but it really jumped him up, within a stacked division to number 7. Obviously, overnight, too, he got a huge pull of a new fan base and people just wanting to see him fight next. He already has a few people calling him out. I'm talking about Darren Till, number 7 welterweight.
Great pick. Another guy considered. He's so far in his career, another guy that's undefeated too, at 16-0 with that draw you mentioned. And much like T City, young guy, he's only 25 years old. And obviously coming off a huge win, the biggest win of his career, knocking out Cowboy Cerrone in the main event. Definitely a great pick for Rising Star. A perfect pick, Kayla.
Thank you.
All right.
And
we also
very excited to see what he's up to in 2018.
Oh, no, go ahead. Sorry, I cut you off.
Oh no, I was just gonna say, I think with these rising stars, when you're waiting to see who they're going to be matched up against next in 2018, that just kind of shows they're the popular ones that everyone's waiting to see what's happening next with them. But you still have a comment?
Yeah, I'm sorry if I mispronounced your name. Akil Xavier, if I said that correctly, mentioned Cody Stamann. I know Cody Stamann from here in Michigan, competed for WXC here in Metro Detroit before getting signed to the UFC. I believe he's 14 or 15-1, currently riding I think like he's won his last 8 or 9 fights, including the big win over Tom Duquesnoy in his last fight. I think that's a pretty good pick. Ray says Volkan Ozdemir. I think that's a solid pick too. I think the only thing with Ozdemir, I hate to say he's old, but a little older than typically I pick people for Rising Star. So that was the only reason I didn't go with him. Same thing with Cody. Even though Cody has a fantastic record, he's been around a little longer than some of these other guys. But that, like I say, they're not rising. They're definitely rising in their careers. And obviously Ozdemir has a title shot coming up. But that's why I didn't pick those two guys, just in case someone was wondering what we were looking for. All right, let's get to the next award here. Let's see. Oh, I lost my list. There we go. All right, Female Fighter of the Year. Now, I strongly considered Cyborg after her win. However, when I was really thinking about it, Cyborg should have won both those fights, and she did win both her fights in the UFC. So while, yes, she won both of them, they were fights people expected her to win. Now, the woman that I ended up picking for this award, I don't think was picked to win either of these fights, really. Or at least it was more of a mix, probably in the first fight she had this year, and then almost unanimously not picked in her next fight. And not only did she win her next fight, which was for a UFC championship, she did so against a fighter that had never lost before, let alone be finished in a fight. And so I think it's really hard to not pick Thug Rose Namajunas as Female Fight of the Year in 2017. I think it's very hard to pick another woman that did accomplish more than she did, not only capturing a UFC championship, but beating 2 very high-quality opponents and finishing both of them.
Yeah, no, I agree. I was torn between both ladies as well. I'm glad we both picked the opposite choices just so we have more to talk about and talk about both ladies respectively. But yeah, Thug Rose, like you said, competing the way that she did, winning the championship like she did, and just kind of coming in as this kind of breath of fresh air as a champion. I think that, again, she's someone that I'm so excited to see her reign as champion and her defend that title. But I like everything that she's saying and doing outside of her skills in the octagon too.
So that's your official pick, is Rose as well?
No, so I actually went with Cyborg. I was on the
Okay.
fence with both ladies. So the reason why I picked Cyborg is I think that, like you said, yes, she was picked to win both of those fights. People see her being dominant in her division. We all know that her division was kind of built around her, and I think that she not only has been, female fighter of the year, but you could even argue fighter of the decade. She's just been dominant and undefeated for so long, and I think that the way that she talks about finally receiving that UFC belt, that was kind of a culmination of all of her belts within previous promotions, competing against previous ladies in that weight class. And I think that this was really just her year to kind of culminate all of her success and all of her hard work that she's put in. I think that now that we're seeing that there's talks of her already competing soon against Megan Anderson, I feel like you had said last week, she's really coming into her prime. And I like that she's continuing to evolve as a mixed martial artist, not just sitting there as a champion that's just going to kind of run through these girls. I really was impressed with her fight with Holly of wanting to go all 5 rounds, test her conditioning, and gets me excited about seeing her perform instead of just saying, oh, I'm not going to catch that fight because I know Cyborg's going to win. I feel like she really wants to continue to evolve as a mixed martial artist. So I think that overall, the culmination of everything she's accomplished and wants to continue to accomplish this year was Cyborg's year.
We had a comment from Ray saying that you were Woman of the Year, but for MMA it was Rose.
Oh, that's so sweet. Thank you, Ray.
All right. Our next award is for Most Improved Fighter. Now, for me, this was probably the hardest one to pick because our criteria is looking for someone that has kind of been around for a while, but maybe has never kind of gotten to that level, that towards that elite level, but is now starting to kind of like figure things out. And so looking over the fighters from different weight classes, was kind of trying to narrow it down, looking at who had a year, maybe who's came on a streak, maybe entering this year. And the fighter that really kind of stood out to me after really doing some research was a guy that was just victorious a few weeks ago, ends up finishing the year 3-0 in 2017, overall on a 6-fight winning streak, and is now firmly in the top 10 of his division. And that is a man from Argentina known as Santiago Ponzinibbio, who is now, like I said, on a 6-fight winning streak. He went 3-0 this year, is coming off of 2 big wins over Mike Perry and Gunnar Nelson. Has really went from a guy that was just pretty much a straight-out brawler to a guy that has turned into a pretty good striker, and I think is starting to slowly improve his grappling game as well. And a guy that I'm not sure if he'll get to a championship title shot, but he's certainly doing the right things to put him in position to compete at the level of some of the other top welterweights in the division. And the guy's really never been in a boring fight either. That's another thing I got to add too. He's a guy that when you hear Santiago Ponzinibbio now, you go, that's a pretty good fighter. And Xavier, the reason I don't pick Dos Anjos is because he's already won a world championship. It's hard to say he's improved when he's still competing at the same level. And so that's why I didn't pick Rafa Dos Anjos. It's hard to say that he's more improved than he was before as a world champion. So that's why it's hard to say he's more improved. It's just simply he's doing it at a different weight class. Because realistically, had he not get kind of going back to like Diakazi, had he not kind of got stupid and got in close to catch a haymaker from Eddie Alvarez, who knows if he ever actually does go up. Because if he wins that fight, I don't know if he leaves the division. Or if he does, it's definitely not as soon. You also got to factor in, what if he ended up beating and actually fighting Conor McGregor and beating him? You know, a lot of different factors I think went into RDA moving up to 170, but that's why I didn't pick him as most improved, and that's why I went with someone like Ponzinibbio for this year's award.
Okay. I feel like you're gonna hate my choice. I was a little just had trouble with this one, with picking this one. I'm going to pick, for unique reasons, Douglas Lima. And the reason why is I wanted to mix this up and bring in a couple of fighters outside of the UFC. I think the reason why I'm picking Douglas Lima is, you know, looking over what he, you know, going into his first title defense against Lorenz Larkin, which some people felt like wasn't the most exciting fight. You know, he was able to win that fight, you know, continue to move on as champion, welterweight champion after he won the belt back. But the reason why I want to say most improved is after that fight, it was announced that he had signed a 6-fight contract with Bellator. So in my eyes, that's when a promotion is, you know, really backing you up, sees potential in you as a champion or at least as a top contender in your division. I think also the reason why I brought him up is, yes, we have his second title defense against Rory McDonald coming up this year, early this year on January 20th. But I think just as far as hype and the, what is the word that I'm looking for? The
Like
the fact,
experience?
I'm sorry, what word did you use?
Like the experience, he's getting more experience, like
Not
fighting in a high.
experience, but just that his promotion believes in him enough to, you know, pull in this 6-fight contract and give him these big fights like Rory, you know, in a stacked division. I guess that's my most improved choice. But like I said, I had
No,
a little trouble with this one.
here's the thing. He's a guy that obviously he had lost to Korjakov, but that was a fight where he was clearly injured. And it was not a guy that was 100% healthy. And it showed. Korjakov really kind of took it to him in that fight. He's come back and won 3-0 since then, knocking out Korjakov, beating Paul Daly, and also most recently defeating Lorenz Larkin. So, which was a good win, a very good win against the guy that was kind of very close to getting a UFC welterweight title shot. So I think that is a great pick. I think I love Douglas Lima. He's a fantastic fighter. Anybody that wins multiple fights via leg kicks, the dude's a bad man. So I have no qualms about you picking Douglas Lima. I think that is a good pick.
Thank you.
He had a question, heavyweight division. I'm not sure what you're referring to, Akil. If you want to maybe expand more, who I think is most improved in the heavyweight division. Is that what you're getting at? If I had to narrow it to a division, you have to say Francis Ngannou, right? I mean, I would say he's the most
improved rising star. KO.
I mean,
give the awards.
We'll get to Francis in a little bit. Don't worry. Wink, wink. All right. Event of the year coming up next. Now, this one to me was between one of two events, one of which I actually personally attended. So I ended up not picking that just to kind of not seem biased a little bit. So I ended up going with UFC 217 for a couple different reasons. One, we saw some fantastic fights. Mm-hmm. Two, we saw 3 titles change hands, which I'm pretty sure has never happened in any card in UFC history. They have had 3 title fights. And also we saw one of my favorite fighters of all time. I think I return to greatness.
Yeah.
So UFC 217 was my pick for event of the year. Close second was the event I attended right here in Detroit, UFC 218. So that was my pick.
That was my pick as well. Like you said, the 3 title changes was just one, you know, shocking, exciting, you know, event after the other. And I think, like you said, I also am a huge fan of GSP. So to see him come back in that style and fashion was just, yeah, a night that everyone was talking about. And that was the fight. Was that the big fight night after the Conor and Floyd boxing match? I can't remember if it was before or after.
Which one?
UFC 217. It was after.
That was in November.
Okay, yeah. So I feel like that was like the next big event, pay-per-view that people were excited about within the UFC.
Yes, because 216 would have been in September, and I think that was the one where Mighty Mouse was on.
Right.
And he may have been the main event, if I'm not mistaken. I got to double check on that.
But
But that one, yeah, was not as because that was Tony Ferguson versus Kevin Lee with Mighty Mouse Ray Borg as the co-main event.
was the
So,
co-main.
well, yeah, that one kind of got thrown together last minute because I think that was supposed to be Habib and Tony, but obviously Kevin Lee filled in and despite losing, I thought did admirably on the short notice and the staph infection.
Yeah, and I think, but with 217, because it was so stacked and maybe not put together last minute like 216, I know it
Right.
had a lot of pressure to deliver, and I feel like it absolutely did. So,
Yeah.
yeah, that was also my choice for event of the year.
All right, submission of the year. To me, I considered two different submissions. I already kind of alluded to Mr. Brian Ortega, my pick for Rising Star, and his submission of Cub Swanson. But I ended up going with another one, the aforementioned UFC 216 Demetrius Mighty Mouse Johnson, and his suplex to armbar over Ray Borg was absolutely fantastic. It's a very difficult move to prove off, and the fact that he somehow in his head came up with, this is a move I'm going to drill in practice, and if I get the opportunity to suplex someone, I'm going to then put them in an armbar. As a guy that's just starting his journey in jiu-jitsu, I can see if you keep on practicing a move and you look for it, you can hit it. The move for me, it seems complicated to set up, is the bicep slicer, and I keep on looking for it. And I'm starting to hit it now in practice, so I can see how someone that's actually an elite athlete and grappler like Mighty Mouse Johnson could pull this off. But still, the fact he did against another elite guy, too, makes it even more the better. And it's just a fantastic submission because you just don't see it coming. You think you're going to see this big slam, and then boom, armbar, tap, match over. And just it's such a move that not only was it a great move, you almost kind of think it's a little bit of a ballsy move, and especially for a guy that doesn't seem to take a lot of risk, and Mighty Mouse Johnson, for him to pull that off almost seems out of character for him. But it just shows you how good he is, that he can just kind of mess around with a move like that and actually have it work for him. So to me, it's Mighty Mouse Johnson over Ray Borg.
Yeah, I'm so glad you picked this because this was one of my favorite submissions of the year as well. And I think, adding to the reasons of why you chose that, like you said, he doesn't really need to do these extra things to dominate his division and pull off these wins. But like I was saying with Chris Cyborg, I appreciate when a champion wants to continue to evolve and practice these moves that, we don't see often and give us, and plus it just looks really cool and super flashy. So it was an exciting move that if anyone was, questioning whether or not Mighty Mouse is an exciting fighter to watch, that he could be a boring champion. Well, I think that this was a performance that kind of shut those people down and respectfully gave a submission of the year nominee.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, let's get to knockout of the year.
Wait, you forgot my submission of the year.
I thought you were picking Mighty Mouse.
Oh, no. I have a different one.
Oh, okay.
I said that was one of my favorites. Okay, so
who's your official pick?
I had a feeling that you would pick that one because I also wanted to pick that submission. I hope I don't butcher his name, but I'm going to go for the first ever Ezekiel choke, and he did it from his back. Alexei Olenek.
Yeah, Alexei Olenek, yep.
Pulled off the first ever Ezekiel choke. Obviously super impressive if you're making history in the UFC in the fashion that he did. I believe it was in one of the first fight nights of the year. So again, when we talk about momentum of getting, exciting finishes and performances started, I think that we can thank Alexei for starting off 2017 with just some crazy finishes and submissions.
Yeah, absolutely. And that was a fantastic submission. It's very hard to pull off in no-gi, which MMA is, or even in a straight no-gi jiu-jitsu competition. However, I just saw it pulled off in a no-gi jiu-jitsu competition at EBI. One of the EBIs, if you go back and look at Fight Pass, one of the legends of jiu-jitsu, and Barry Yoshida actually pulled one off. So it is possible. And I hate to toot my own horn, but I actually pulled one off in training not too long ago. I was in mount though, on top, and I transitioned from a failed an Americana, and then I just came back around. It was almost kind of like more of like a front naked choke, but I guess you could call it Ezekiel, and put the pressure on. And it's not something I had ever trained before. I had practiced the Ezekiel choke with gi, which is the preferred method of how to do it, because you grab your own collar and then you and then you switch it on. That's the proper Ezekiel choke. And for self-defense purposes too, it can work out too. But my body just went and did it. And afterwards he was like, that was a good one. And I kind of thought to myself, what did I just do? Like, I had no idea I even really did it. It wasn't something consciously like, oh, that Americana failed, I'm going to move to this. I do love Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. That's why I'm practicing it. But yeah, no, it was you can pull it off, and it was probably lucky. I just simply was a little better than the guy too. I just had been training longer than him. That's all. But yeah, no, it's a very hard submission to pull off, and even to do it from the back against the guy that's a pretty good fighter, and Daniel Olmachuk. But that's just what this guy does. It's funny. It's the first one in the UFC. But I swear to, if I remember correctly, he's pulled off like 5 or 6 of these in his career. Like, this is not the first Ezekiel choke that he's pulled off. And I think he's 55-11. I think he has like 50 submission victories or something ridiculous like that. This dude is a very incredible grappler. And also you got to add the fact he's still doing it at age 40. You also got that in there too. All right. So Lexi Olenek, that's a good pick. Let's see, our next award would be Knockout of the Year. Okay, so for Knockout of the Year, as I was kind of mentioning, I pulled the little, the wink, wink, nudge, nudge, earlier. And not only that, I saw this one in person, which even added to the mystique and just the awesomeness of this man. And that's Mr. Francis Ngannou for his soul-crushing victory over Alistair Overeem at UFC 218 with his monstrous left upper hook, or upper hook. Well, it kind of looked like uppercut. That, as we've seen from the photo edits, you see Alistair Overeem's soul leaving his body with his head
and he
fully
leans
back,
and gets
landing on the canvas unconscious. It's everything you want a knockout to be. It was exciting. It was fast. It was violent, and it made you stand up on your feet. I can tell you that. So that to me was the knockout of the year.
Yeah, and so we have Ray saying TJ over Cody, which, yes, that was definitely a huge knockout, like we were talking about before, a change of belt, and obviously so much passion and build-up leading up to that fight. But I have to say that mine is also Francis Ngannou, and the reason why is we all were predicting one of these guys to go to sleep. We were all predicting a knockout, yet the way that Francis Ngannou did it, everyone's mouth still dropped. So I think when you can get people to still be shocked, even though they saw it coming, that to me is just knockout of the year. There were several finishes and knockouts following that, going towards the end of the year, but I still, when I'm, someone asked me, what was the knockout that to you stands out of 2017? I think that most people will say that Francis Ngannou one. And also it got him a shot at the title. Of course, yes, he had a few finishes leading up to that, but that for sure locked in that he was going to be facing Stipe this month in 2018.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, let's see here. The next award, Fighter of the Year. Or Fight of the Year. I'm sorry, Fight of the Year. Almost a fighter. Yeah, Ray commented TJ over Cody. I think we had a couple other comments come in here. Let me see here 1 second. I think we had our friend Mr. Xavier make a couple of comments, so I wanted to get to him. Didn't think I missed him here. Let's see, it's not showing some of the... Here we go. Okay, let's see. We had... Okay, I guess I didn't miss any comments. Oh, he just commented now. He said Fabricio deserved that title shot. Yeah, I think Fabricio, you can make a case for him getting a shot at the championship. At the end of the day, he's already fought Stipe, and they wanted to give him a new opponent, and so I think that's why he probably got it over Fabricio Verdum. However, if Verdum wins another fight, regardless of opponent, I think you got to give him that rematch against Stipe. I think it will happen. So I think Fabricio will get another crack at Stipe Miocic. I think that's I think he deserves that, especially after the whole kind of Kane debacle and stuff with the injury and stuff. So I think he'll get it here in 2018. And I think for him, it could also be his last fight because he's starting to get older too. I think that'd be a great way to go out. Not only do you revenge a bad loss on your home soil, you get a chance to become the champion. So I would think that's what Fabricio Verdum is going to be looking for, and I think he's going to be he'll be getting that opportunity sometime this year because I think he's clearly the number 2 heavyweight in the world. I think that's pretty clear.
Yeah, I think I see that rematch happening too, and I think that we have to think about the champion and the fact that he is on the verge of making history with his division. And like you said, he's kind of already run through a few of these guys, so why not have him run through all of the guys in his division and prove himself as a champion that he can take out these new, scary up-and-coming guys like Francis Ngannou to, one, either move the belt over to Ngannou or prove that he is the real champion of his division, taking out everybody in there.
All right, fight of the year. Now, this one, definitely several fights happened that I thought were pretty fantastic this year. But, again, it was an event that I got to see live and in person, and that probably adds to it. But in its defense, as far as a back-and-forth nature of who you think's winning at any given time, I think this fight probably encapsulates this more than any other fight you could pick. And that's Yancy Medeiros against Alex Cowboy Oliveira at UFC 218. I mean, you see Cowboy looking like he's going to get the knockout. Then you see Yancy. And then you see Cowboy. Back to Yancy. Back to Cowboy. And then finally Yancy finishes it off there in the third round. Both guys absolutely bloodied up, battered, can barely stand. I still don't know how Yancy got through some of those strikes by Cowboy Oliveira. And when I think that wasn't skill. That was just pure guts, heart, and determination, and just a strong will. And that's something, those are things you can't teach. You either have that or you don't. And Yancy Medeiros has that. And it was able to get him through this fight and get a victory and earn, in my opinion, the fight of the year. He had Joe Rogan afterwards saying that's one of the best fights he's ever seen. I mean, I've seen a lot of fights, but Joe Rogan's probably seen 3 or 4 times the amount of fights I've seen, which is ridiculous because I've seen a lot of fights. Just to show how wrong Joe Rogan is. And for Rogan to say that, I think is a high honor too. So while I'm not trying to say every other fight paled in comparison, to me, this was it. Just how many times it went back and forth. You don't typically see that in MMA. You see maybe 1 or 2 times, and then it ends. But to see this go back like 4 or 5 times was pretty incredible. So, yeah, I'm going to go with Yancy Medeiros against Cowboy Oliveira.
Yeah, the resurrection of both men coming back and just the heart and grit in there was just so exciting. Okay, I feel again like you won't really love my pick, but I just thought this would be fun to throw out there, and you didn't really give me too many rules. So my fight of the year is going to be Conor McGregor versus Floyd Mayweather.
Oh, no.
In the boxing match.
Well, everybody, this is Kayla's last week as host of the show, so I hope you enjoy her on the show. So I'm not going to let her get to the next award. No, but I see why you picked it. I see why you picked it, though. Okay, I do see why you picked it.
Yeah, just because, we have to look at it. It was something that everyone was talking about all year long, had so much buildup, of course. But then we have to think about it, and I get it too. It was a boxing match, so, it wasn't technically an MMA fight, but of course it included one of the biggest MMA stars almost ever, Conor McGregor. And I think just the fact that it pushed boundaries to where Conor got the UFC to, let an MMA fighter go into a boxing match. Obviously, the star power of both guys, and then just kind of the aftermath that it's also put on the division. Conor made so much money. It might have kind of blown up his ego a little bit more too. But yeah, just the aftermath that it's had within this division and how we're talking about what's going to happen with the title, if it's going to be vacated, if it's going to be defended. I just think that this was a huge fight that, yeah, for many reasons, just made such an impact on our sport, whether or not we like that or not.
Well, the reason I was joking with you about getting kicked off the show, that was definitely true. But no, it's fine picking this for a couple of different reasons, because I think more so than the fight itself, the situation surrounding it. You had, I think, the second ever highest pay-per-view buy rate of all time. And not only that, you had the highest amount of illegally streamed pay-per-view as well, which I'm sure is one of the reasons why it wasn't number one. And then you had in the demand for this, and another reason it wasn't get number one, you had cable outages. When have you ever heard of servers for cable? Huge Comcast and Bright House and Spectrum and Cox Media, these big, huge companies that are worth billions of dollars, had their servers shut down, and people were not even able to buy it. The UFC.TV, where you could buy it on, their online servers were maxed out. That's ridiculous. Not even in the one was the number one pay-per-view had these issues.
Mm-hmm.
And I've never seen these issues for a sporting event, pay-per-view or otherwise. So you add in kind of those circumstances around it for a fight that we all knew what was probably going to happen, which was Floyd Mayweather being victorious, and that's what happened, is kind of insane when you really think about it.
For sure. And I think that, yes, because I had a feeling you were going to pick a fight that, like you did, showcased skills and heart of guys in this competition of like you said, seeing one of the best fights that even Joe Rogan's ever seen. But when I thought about it, I wanted to have a little fun with this and just pick something that just had so much influence, and like I said, the aftermath of this fight and what it's kind of done for the division and Conor's legacy is just crazy.
All right. The grand poobah of awards, the fighter of the year. Now, this one, I probably really only considered like 2 or 3 people for this, because I really like to have a fighter win at least 2 fights to be considered fighter of the year. Because that shows you at least competed in, both like half years. Ideally, like to pick someone that fought 3 times, but that can't always be the case, especially for someone that's competing at a high level. Yeah. So that kind of narrowed it down to, like I said, about 3 people for me. What about for you? What was kind of your thinking going into this?
Going into this fighter of the year, just I guess the way that they've kind of grown as a fighter, the level of competition that they've faced. There's a few factors in there. I'm curious to see who you pick after, because I feel like we might have the same pick.
Okay. How about you go first this time with your fighter of the year?
My pick is going to be Max Holloway. I feel like was that your pick too?
I don't know. Was it? I don't know. No, go ahead with Max.
Yeah, I think that just, what he's been able to accomplish as a fighter within his career, being so young, having this mindset of a champion, of fighting and defending, whenever, whoever. I love that he wanted to continue to compete in Detroit, even though some factors were thrown in where he was going to have to face Jose Aldo again. The fact that he finished Jose Aldo both times, who obviously was a champion and had a legacy of his own within that division. I just think that he is this new mixed martial artist, new champion. And yeah, I just love everything that he is encompassing as a champion. I love his mindset. And then skill wise, I mean, I don't know anyone who, well, besides Brian Ortega, maybe he definitely has some people that are coming up and going to challenge him. But I just think he continues to evolve and grow as a fighter. And every time that he fights, he's just so exciting to watch.
For me, it came down to really two people. It was Robert Whittaker and Max Holloway.
Mm-hmm.
I think those are the two people to pick. If you look at the quality of competition they beat, the fact that they beat both of their opponents this year, they finished both of their opponents this year. They not only captured a championship, but was fighting at a championship level. And those are all things I consider. Now, the reason I picked Max Holloway over Robert Whittaker was not just because he defended the title, but I think the signs to beat Jose Aldo even weren't as prevalent. I think Robert Whittaker, even coming into the Jacare fight, I think that was more of an even matchup, because if you add in Robert Whittaker's tremendous striking and power skills along with a very tough guy to take down against an experienced jiu-jitsu guy like Jacare. So I think that was maybe a little more odds, where I think even though Max was winning, there was still a case of, well, he hasn't beat like a real elite guy. You know, I mean, yeah, he beat Cub Swanson. We make a case, okay, Cub Swanson's never really got the title. You can kind of dismiss that one. You can say, oh, okay, Ricardo Lamas, yeah, he got the shot against Aldo, but, you know, he's never really beat. You know, you can kind of dismiss some of those wins. And so I think coming into the Aldo fight, it was like, is he ready for the big time? He's never been on this stage before. You know, is he ready to take on a guy like this in his hometown? And not only did he do that, he kind of almost like I said, roped it him a little bit and kind of like gave him a false sense of security. And then he almost did the exact same thing, you know, a few weeks ago here in Detroit. And he just wiped out this guy. And it just seemed like he did it with ease. He did it the way he wanted to do it. And I'm not trying to take anything away from Robert Whittaker, but just it seems like he's doing his best mixed martial arts right now. And he just blew away the guy, not once, but twice, who was considered the best ever to do it at his division with 5 title defenses. And he made it look easy. I mean, so, yeah, I think for me it's Max Holloway. Robert Whittaker, a very, very close second. A very close second, though.
He could be the fighter of the year in 2018. I think that's what I'm predicting for Robert Whittaker.
If he beats Luke Rockhold, I mean, he puts himself already up there. But I think maybe also because it was an interim championship, I don't know, maybe that somehow kind of in my head swayed it, and that's not Robert Whittaker's fault. I mean, that's Michael Bisping's fault for ducking Yoel Romero, which you all know that happened. So, yeah, that was my pick here was Max Holloway, and I like I said, I think there are a couple other fighters. I usually feel pretty good, like unanimous in every pick, but this one I was kind of more like, all right, it could clearly be Robert Whittaker. And I think Ray mentioned Mighty Mouse Johnson. I think that's a solid pick as well for breaking the record as well. But I would just say the reason I wouldn't pick somebody like Mighty Mouse is just I feel like he's just so, and it's almost a detriment because he's how good. Like he's just so far above everybody, you know, that it's hard to be like that guy's that quality. But Robert Whittaker, you know, against the guys, and Max Holloway against Joseph, you know, those are fights that seem like the other guy actually has a chance.
Right, exactly.
Anything else you wanted to add to these end of the year awards, Kayla?
No, you know, it's just been a very exciting year. Like you said, there's been many changes of titles. There's a lot of fights to look forward to and matchups with these new champions. This month itself, I think, has some really big, exciting fights. We have Stipe's return. Yeah, I'm just excited for 2018. What about you?
Very excited, and as I mentioned, I'm actually going to post a link in the comments right now to the as you just saw pop up, of the list. So just in case anyone wanted to go back, recheck what our awards were, maybe you came in late, missed some of the earlier ones, I just posted the link in the comments, so you'll be able to go and check out what our official picks were. And also, I think you'll see some of the picks from previously of the show, the last, I think I have 2015 and 2016 in there when we started doing the awards a few years ago. So I think those are in there as well. But yes, as we end 2017, now entering 2018, obviously we already have a pretty good slate of fights lined up for a lot of big organizations, including obviously the UFC, Bellator. Obviously, I think you and our good friend Carrie Steller are going to be doing an Invicta preview tomorrow right here on this very platform, MMA World and MMA UK. So look out for that. It's tomorrow at 4 p.m. Eastern, 1 p.m. Pacific.
Yeah, thank you for mentioning that. Yeah, please come check it out.
And then 9 p.m. If you are in the UK. And that also kind of brings us to somebody like Mackenzie Dern, who is now going to be the newest fighter to kind of make that transition from Invicta to the UFC. It looks as though she's going to continue to fight at 115, taking on Ashley Yoder, though she now does have the ability to fight at 125 if 115 doesn't suit her, because there has been some weight issues with Dern so far in her career. So that is something that she can possibly do. Obviously, talk about rising stars, someone I think you could have considered, Nico Montoya, the current UFC women's flyweight champion. She'll be making her first title defense at some point in 2018. So we'll see how she does post-tough, taking on some very tough competitions. We also have another girl like Andrea Lee making her debut coming up in the UFC in the flyweight division. We have Paige Van Zant and Jessica Ai coming up in St. Louis, making their flyweight debuts for the UFC. Not career flyweight debut for Jessica Ai, but that division's really going to be kicked off this year. You already mentioned Megan Anderson, rumored to fight Cyborg as early as UFC 221. Doesn't look like that's going to happen, according to Megan Anderson's Facebook page, if you go and check that out, as she pretty much says it ain't happening in Perth. But that's probably going to happen at some point. I think somebody mentioned, I think that was our friend Xavier, mentioned free John Jones. John Jones can come back at some point this year. We're going to see the MMA debut of arguably the greatest grappler in the world, Gary Tonin, with ONE FC coming up this year, which I'm super excited for. We probably still won't see Conor McGregor fight, so that's fun. We're also going to probably see Tony versus Khabib, finally. Maybe the fourth time's the charm. We're going to see if Stipe sets the all-time heavyweight record with 3 title defenses. That's insane.
Is GSP continue to compete?
Yeah, will GSP fight again, or is he going to pull, the Diaz brothers route and just chill for more money? So I'm going to use more props this year, as noted by this episode, so that's fun.
We have the heavyweight tournament in Bellator.
Heavyweight tournament in Bellator, which I still think will be won by injury replacement Justin Wren. I'm still holding to that. Boy, what else? Anything else you can think of? I know some of these are serious, most of these are jokes. But
Floyd might compete in MMA.
Yeah, it could happen. Probably not, but it could happen. I think we're also going to see, speaking of combat sports, I think we're going to see some pretty good matchups coming from Glory Kickboxing as well, with the return of Badr Hari. And obviously a guy I interviewed a few weeks ago, and Chris Camozzi. I think he could very well be competing for the Glory Middleweight Championship, and he'd be the first MMA fighter turned kickboxer to win a championship. So I think that's a big deal. Trying to think of what else might happen this year. I know Peter's watching now. Peter always likes to say UFC in Russia. I think UFC in Russia is a possibility in 2018 at some point. I think that's very realistic. I also would like to see a UFC fight in Hawaii. I think those people there deserve it. I think Max Holloway deserves it. And I know BJ Penn, there was a little rumor there that he may be coming back. He said, no, I'm not coming back. But he kind of said, I'd love to see a UFC fight in Hawaii. So I feel like if he does come back, that is what he would come back for. They say something about taxes and stuff. I don't know. I don't think it's anything like that, because MMA is legal in the state. They have fights there all the time that aren't UFC. It's not like an MMA fight's never taken place on Hawaiian soil before. I think the UFC is thrown off by the fact that their only two choices for a big stadium is either the University of Hawaii basketball stadium, which seats about 12,000 with the floor seats and everything, or the University of Hawaii football stadium, which obviously is outdoor. Hawaii is known to get a lot of rain and would hold like 60,000. Big gap in attendance. However, I think they just do it at that stadium because here's the thing. You're going to sell out 12,000 seats.
Right.
I'll take the guarantee sellout every day because I've been to UFC events. They have not had 12,000 people. Okay? I can tell you that for a fact. So it's not like the UFC. Every single event is getting over 12,000 people. Okay? Let's get that straight. So take the guaranteed $12,000, have Max fight somebody there, and be done with it. You know? I don't get it.
Yeah, no, I hope that they make that happen. I think they will. I think that the more that Max continues to, receive recognition as Fighter of the Year and continue to defend his belt and continue to put it out there that he wants that fight in Hawaii, I think they'll make it happen. I hope so.
All right.
And then we all need to go on a vacation.
Right. Yeah, I'd love to go to Hawaii. I've never been there before. So maybe one of these days. All right, she is KO Baby. You can follow her on Twitter and Instagram at fangirl_MMA. I am Jim Graham. My Twitter and Instagram says at Jim Graham. It's just my name. I can't come up with something cool like that. Any other final thoughts here, Kayla?
No, I enjoyed talking 2017 with you. Like Jim said, please check out Carrie Steller and I's coverage of Invicta FC 27 coming up. We'll be talking tomorrow and have a little bit of a girls' night. Joe.
But yeah, absolutely. Excited for that. So we will be back next week. We're going to do, let's see, next week I believe is the UFC Fight Night, Cowboy Cerrone versus Yancy Medeiros, I believe is the 14th, I think?
We think that one.
Am I getting confused? No, that was in February. I'm sorry. It's Jeremy Stevens against Duho.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we'll be previewing that along with talking about a little bit of Invicta as well. Talking that. So that's what's on for next week. That'll be January 11th. Thank you to everybody that tuned in here on MMA World or MMA UK or the Beyond the Cage Facebook page. So for KO Bay, I am Jim Graham. Thank you for watching another edition of Beyond the Cage. Goodbye, everybody.